Welcome, everyone. This is episode 3 of your Road to WrestleMania series. I'm Zach from the Yogo Gaming and Reviews, and this is my number 8 WrestleMania on the list, and this is one of the better ones. This was the 10th WrestleMania, which also took place at Madison Square Garden, as did the first one. This was the second of 3 WrestleManias that took place at Madison Square Garden, so it was in New York City. The date was March 20th, 1994. And the theme of this WrestleMania was Bret Hart. And could he capture the championship? This was amidst a push of Lex Luger, who came over. It was the Lex Express. And they were trying to create the new Hulk Hogan, which I'll get into later. But it was definitely one of the better WrestleManias that I had seen, and one of the better WrestleManias that I've put on my list. Now, all the WrestleManias that I've put on my list are definitely my favorites. While this one isn't higher in the list, it still stands out to me more. So, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. First of all, this was the first WrestleMania where Vince McMahon was the lead announcer, and this was the first one that you got with him and Jerry the King Lawler, who are one of my favorite tandems with the announce crew. He actually ended up introducing Little Richard to perform America the Beautiful. It was different, not necessarily in a bad way, but it was Little Richard style, and Little Richard is awesome. I actually like some of his music. There, y'all know something new about me. But this was the first opening the opening contest of this was the Bret Hart versus Owen Hart match. And I will say off the top, I cannot do this match justice. I could not call this match or speak of it and it have the same volume, the same gravitas, the same luster and beauty that it had. The way they crafted this match, the way that they performed, the level that they performed was just it was magical. It's the first word. It was fantastic. It was everything you'd want in a wrestling match. And the fact that they come from the family that they came from, the fact that they are who they are, the background, just they made this match. This was the match of the night, easily, hands down. And it was the opening, and it stole the show. Well, other matches had to follow it, and a lot of them couldn't. There was one other match on this card that came close, and we'll get to it. But this match was set up by the fact that Owen became jealous of Bret. That Bret was having all the spotlight, and he was in the shadows, and, you know, him knocking Bret down at the Survivor Series in '93, leading to them actually trying to fix things, and then having their tag team title match against the Quebecers at that Royal Rumble in '94. But then Owen leaving Bret, and then, you know, knocking him down and screwing him, basically. So Owen came out, you know, the King of Hearts. Owen Hart. How did I describe Owen? Owen is this is just my opinion, and I know people will disagree, but my opinion is Owen Hart is the best wrestler to have never been the world champion. I've heard that used a couple times with different wrestlers, but to me, Owen Hart is the best wrestler who has never been the world heavyweight champion. And I think that Owen was he wasn't as appreciated as he should have been. He was underrated, if I could say that. I mean, people knew Owen had his talent, but people, I don't think, appreciated him as much as they should have. And it is a shame that Owen never got to be the champion. And I think a lot of that had to do with what went down with his brother, you know, a couple of years later. But Bret comes out, and Bret gets the big ovation because he's the guy. This is Bret at the start of his run. He'd already been the champion once. But during this match, I'm going to try my best to convey what this match was. I mean, Owen played his heel role great, and the match was slow at first. Him and Brett just kind of feeling each other out. Owen trying to show up his brother, and yeah, look at me, I'm better than him. And oh my gosh, the wrestling in this match was phenomenal. Owen being the heel role that he was and trying to one up him, slapping Brett in the face, and Brett showing, oh, I'm mad, and these guys showing that there was real tension when in reality there was no issues. These two loved each other. They were the babies of the family, and the story that they told with the back and forth struggle and the jealousy that Owen had, you could see it in the match. When Owen would get frustrated. Or if Brett was getting frustrated because he kind of maybe felt like Owen was one-upping him at points in the match. And these two, they went in what was like a 20, 25-minute epic. And I can use that word epic because this is definitely a match that would qualify in that as an actual real-life epic. And Owen, he did, going with the heel thing, did whatever he had to. If it had to be the tights or pulling Brett's hair, whatever it was, he played the role of the jealous brother who just didn't care no more. Way better than I think people thought he would have. And this match went way over with the fans at that time. Me going back and watching it is my favorite all-time WrestleMania match. It was just one of those epics. Again, as I just said. Owen even went to the point in this match that he would go aerial with it. And like I said, him and Brett were back and forth with each other in this match, doing everything that they could to one-up each other. And before this match ever took place, Brett was talking about how he didn't want to, but in this, Brett was a little more aggressive than usual. Not like WrestleMania 13 aggressive, but he was pretty aggressive. And he even, at a point tried jumping over the ropes, tried to dive a crossbody, and he got the crossbody, but he ended up hurting his knee. I'm pretty sure it was a kayfabe injury, but he hurt his knee. Owen, he took advantage and he worked on that knee, and he was just relentless with that knee. And Brett sold it, but he'd keep trying to fight back, and then Owen would keep knocking him back down. And finally, Brett got a little bit of momentum going, got Owen into the corner, tried to do a victory roll off the top rope, but, Owen caught himself, sat down, and got the 1, the 2, and the 3, and it was just incredible. This match, the crowd showed him, a lot of love. The crowd showed them a lot of respect for both Owen and for Brett. And like I said, it was a classic. This was, without doubt, a instant classic. So, moving on. Todd Pettengill, he was a decent announcer, even back in the day. He had to interview Owen after the match, with the shock of the crowd that Owen actually beat Brett. He was gloating about it, and deservingly so. And he talked about how he told Brett that he was better. He told Brett that he could beat him, and how he wasn't taking nothing away from Brett, but, he's going to be the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be, and that he was better. Then you had Sig Sperling. I guess he was for Hair for Men. I've never heard of him. He showed off Howard Finkel's new hairdo, which I think turned out to be a toupee. So what do they follow up this classic, this 30-minute classic with? A mixed tag team match with Bam Bam Bigelow and Luna taking on Doink the Clown and Dink. Dink, by the way, for those who don't know, was Midget. This match was what it was. It was a filler. It was to, just kind of be there. And Bam Bam did what Bam Bam was supposed to do. And Doink did what Doink did, being goofy. Bam Bam being the powerful guy. Dink, even when he was in the ring with Luna, was kind of outmatched. I mean, he got some moves in, and you could see that he knew what he was doing in the ring. Like I said, he got a little offense, but Luna outmatched him. And this was, for the most part, a one-sided type match. Watching towards the end, when Doink's running around the ring and Luna and Bigelow are trying to catch him, diving at him and missing was funny. So it had the little bit of comedy. But Bam Bam, he ended up being too powerful for Doink. He ends up slamming Doink, gets a diving headbutt on Doink from the top, and he got the pin. Afterwards, they ended up basically smashing Dink because he kind of tried to buck up to Bam Bam Bigelow, and that didn't work out for him. That was a bad day for them. So that was that match. It was all right. I mean, it was definitely a time filler. WrestleMania still wasn't the epic that it is now, even back then. But, I had forgotten about this, and I'm glad that I went back and I've rewatched these WrestleManias, because there are things that I tend to forget sometimes. Some things I'm like, shoot, why did I forget that? And there's things like, dude, I forgot that. Fake President Clinton being in the crowd. That was great. Okay, so the next match definitely was better than the little mixed tag match that we just did. But it was also a little confusing and a little sad when you go back and you think about it, and then everything that transpired with the competitor afters. The Falls Count Anywhere match with Randy Savage and Crush. This was Randy Savage's last WrestleMania. He ended up going to WCW, and his career just never seemed to be the same after that. But you had Crush with Mr. Fuji, and what made this confusing? It was a Falls Count Anywhere, and being how I wasn't watching wrestling at the time, I was used to the way they do them now, and have been for the last, say, 20 years, where you can pin the guy anywhere, and that's the match. This was different. You pinned your guy anywhere in the building, but he had 60 seconds to get back to the ring, and the match would continue. So Savage came out, huge ovation. Crush came out before Crush could even get started. Here comes Savage down the aisle, his crazy madness, jumping Crush. This match was brutal. This match was a violent match. Now, it is not up to the scale of, say, Royal Rumble 2000 Street Fight, Triple H, Mick Foley. But it was violent for the time, since they were still in McMahon's gimmick era. Fuji would interfere a few times, and Savage finally, I think, punched him at a point. Crush tried using Mr. Fuji's salt, and it got thrown into his face by Savage, who knocked it in there. This match was back and forth. They ended up fighting in the crowd. They ended up fighting into the back. This was a brutal match. A lot of pinfalls at the beginning. There's one part, and this is when I was like, even now, I'm like, okay, what would have happened? Savage does the diving elbow, right? He's in the ring. McMahon goes, pin him, Savage, pin him. He doesn't. He pushes Crush out of the ring. So does that mean he has to pin Crush outside the ring? That he can't take place in the ring? I don't know. I was a little like trying to figure out what was the real rules. So, but the match kept going. Like I said, they ended up fighting into the back. Savage did something, and he ended up tying Crush's feet with some rope, tying him up to a thing and hanging him upside down, which Crush, eventually fell down, but Savage got back to the ring and he won the match. For the time of the era that it was in, it was a good, solid Falls Count Anywhere match. I think after they did that, they're like, that doesn't make sense to people. Let's do something different. Because I don't know if it was like that beforehand. That's the first Falls Count Anywhere match that I could see going back. So, and it's the only one I've found. But then you get Todd Pettengill interviewing President Clinton, just asking him about the show and how he's enjoying it. And, I'm a huge wrestling fan, always have been. It's just a real fun time. Thank you, sir, blah, blah, blah. You see more of him later on. Okay. Women's Championship match. Leilani Kai, who was in the first WrestleMania, taking on Alundra Blaze, who, if you don't know, is Medusa from WCW. If this was an odd time for wrestling, I think they had just reestablished the Women's Championship. I could go back and I could look, but I think they had just... I know the Women's Championship hadn't been back for very long, and Alundra Blaze was the very young person taking on this older veteran. Moolah, I guess, finally gave up the belt after, who knows, like 100 years or so, something. The match was good, but you could tell the difference between the athlete that Alundra Blaze was, and probably still could be now, versus Leilani Kai, who came from the golden era of wrestling, where women weren't predominant. And you could see Moolah was the spearhead for women's wrestling, and I think it's sad that she wasn't put in with what we have now. She was there when women were still kind of an afterthought at that time, because it was all about Bretts and the Hogans and the Savages and the Yokozunas of the world, and that's what it was about. So I think if you took Alundra Blaze then, Medusa, take her from then, and put her into the mix now, it's like on an NXT, she'd thrive, and she'd probably even look better than she does now, or does at this point. But the match, like I said, was good. Alundra Blaze was more than outclassing Leilani Kai. But she ended up getting a German into a bridge for a pin. She won the match, and they didn't even show a highlight. They just cut. Okay, so let's move on. Yeah, Vince. You see Rhonda Shear backstage. HBK comes in, and up all night, and Burt Reynolds comes back. It was funny. They cut away to see this when they were starting for the tag team title match, which to me was a throwaway match. It was men on a mission, Mabel and Mo, to take on the Quebecers, which was Jacques and Pierre. One of them, I think it's Jacques, was the Mountie. They were with Johnny Molo, whatever his name was, Raven. Raven was a manager before he wrestled in ECW. Mabel's an agile guy. He was back then, and I could see that. And I see why they kind of pushed him after the King of the Ring about a year later. The Quebecers, I don't know why they were a tag team. But Men on a Mission made frequent tags. The Quebecers were pretty good with their heel tactics, and they made a good team. They kept Mo in their corner. They worked on Mo. This match didn't last very long. The match ended in, I don't know, it was just like it stopped, and you found out that Mabel and Mo won off of a disqualification, I guess because Johnny/Raven kept trying to get into the ring after pretty much they squashed Pierre with a splash of some sort. It looked like Mo jumped off the top holding Mabel's head, and it just kind of squished him underneath. And so then, you had Rhonda Shear and Donnie Wahlberg coming out. Rhonda Shear being the timekeeper and Donnie Wahlberg being the ring announcer. It's kind of funny. Donnie Wahlberg was at WrestleMania 94. His wife now, Jenny McCarthy, was at WrestleMania 95. Who knew? This was the first of the WWE title matches. Number one thing I want to point out is Yokozuna is not Japanese. He is a Samoan. He is a part of Rikishi's family. He's a part of the Leilani, the Lau. I forgot how to pronounce it, but he's a part of their family. He's Roman Reigns' uncle or something. But you had Mr. Perfect as the referee. He came back as a surprise appearance. Yokozuna defended against Lex Luger, who at the time, as I kind of briefly mentioned earlier, was being pushed to be the next Hulk Hogan. No, WWE, he is not Hulk Hogan. Lex was definitely better in the ring than Hulkster, but, Luger, he got a good ovation. Fans were definitely for him. But this match was slow. a lot of rest holds by Yokozuna because he was a bigger guy. A lot of just putting his hands in the shoulder and the trapezius muscle. But he used his power on Luger a lot. Luger tried to mount an offense, but kept getting knocked down. Just every time Luger would build a little bit of momentum, he'd get derailed quicker than the Lex Express. So finally, towards the end, Luger starts, clotheslining him, and then Yokozuna would grab him for a belly-to-belly suplex. Luger got back up, finally got some more clotheslines in, hit him with the forearms. Then you get Cornette climbing up on the ring, trying to interfere, Fuji trying to interfere. So Luger knocks all of their butts down. He ends up hitting Yokozuna again with the forearm, I think. Goes for the pin, and Perfect's like trying to push Fuji out, trying to push Cornette out. And then Luger's like, hey, let's have some. Hey, I'm getting the pin. So Luger goes back for the pin. Get back up, because what is Perfect doing again? Checking. And finally Luger's like, dude, I'm trying to pin him. So what happens? Luger gets disqualified. I don't know why they had this match. They weren't doing triple threats at the time. They weren't doing triple threats at the time, and it is what it is. You know what I mean? So, ooh. It's getting darker in here. The sun's starting to settle on me. I gotta open my... Oh, it's too much light. Let me adjust this. And no, I'm not cutting this out. Everyone gets to see this. Nah. Looks weird. Much better. So, yes, you notice the lighting is different. I had to fix this. So, yes, I did edit that out. But, what this match took place for, I'm not sure. I know they were trying to make Luger look good. I don't know. The match kind of ended up being a waste. Like I said, it was a lot of rest holds. It was a very slow match. It was tedious to sit and watch through because the majority of the match was Luger on his side doing this number. So, Yoko was a big guy. He had to work with what you had. But then you see Pettingale backstage trying to talk to Perfect, asking him what was going on. He says, hey, it was fair. Called it down the middle. He shouldn't be putting his hands on officials, me as a referee, or anyone. He gets what he gets for it. And then Luger, you see Luger come back. And this is the best acting I've ever seen Luger do. You better tell me what's going on. It better be good, or I'm going to beat you up, blah, blah, blah. And they had to be separated. I don't know if this led to a match. So... Harvey Whippleman's in the ring. He's insulting the Fink. Howard Finkel. Finkel finally gets sick of it. Finkel shoves him. Here comes Adam Bomb, who grabs Fink, and then here comes Earthquake. He attacks him from behind. We have a match. Earthquake versus the Atom Bomb. This match was literally less than a minute. Earthquake knocked him down, gave him like a slam or two, runs this rope, comes back, sits on him. What did they call it? He just got squashed. I called it the Earthquake. Whatever. Atom Bomb got beat in less than a minute. So now you got Todd Pettengill interviewing Yokozuna, Cornette, one of the best talkers during that time frame, up going into the Attitude Era. How everything in the match before was fair, and then starts insulting Bret Hart, telling him how, it ain't about whether or not he's going to win the title more, it's whether he's going to walk out with his health, and if he's going to be able to walk away at all, basically. So, pretty good interview. And here comes the second best match of the night, but yet the most iconic ladder match there has ever been. Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon. Shawn had Diesel with him. Diesel got sent to the back pretty early. This is another match that I cannot do justice speaking about it, because the performance that these men put on were just top-notch. The legacy that these men left behind, and the fact that so many since then have tried to emulate this match and emulate what they did, no one has been able to do it. Razor just coming out, going under the ladder. Oh, bad luck. Defying the bad luck. I mean, the spots that these guys did, they did things in this match that before, I mean, they'd had ladder matches before this, but nothing like this. I mean, just a couple examples. This match, innovative. The, HBK using the ladder to, sit on the turnbuckle, leaning against it, and just falling on Razor, or Razor knocking him off. Never before had people really been kicked off the ladder, and the ladder had never really been used. Razor just throwing HBK off, HBK using the ladder. And the most iconic moment ever is when HBK gets on the top of the ladder and does that splash. That's just a couple of things. There's so much to go over, but I can't do it justice because the point of this WrestleMania series is anyone who's not into wrestling or hasn't watched wrestling, this is for you to be like, that match sounds like it was cool, even though I do none of these matches justice by talking about them. But maybe you would go, yeah, I should go back and I should watch that. Because these guys had such high impact moves. This was such a high velocity match. It never slowed down. It just didn't. These guys, this match made them main eventers. Shawn Michaels went on to become the world champion. Razor could have been world champion, but he went to WCW, therefore he just didn't fit into the picture. But I truly believe if Razor would have stuck around, he'd have been champion. And they told the story, even in a ladder match, how good these guys are, it was about the Intercontinental Championship. Both men claiming to be the champion, both men had belts. Who was going to be the undisputed champion? That's what this was about. It was about the belt. That's what made the Intercontinental Championship back at this time so great, because you weren't the world champion, but if you were the Intercontinental Champion, it was just as good. You were just as important. And, after everything they did to each other in this match, they being exhausted and hitting each other's finishers, and the other one still being able to keep them from climbing the ladder. Finally, Razor pushes the ladder over. Shawn falls into the ropes, gets his leg caught, trying to get out. Razor climbs the ladder and gets both belts, and you see him with his arms stretched with both belts up. The iconic moments that this match left. This made the ladder match so special and made everyone want to see more ladder matches. And then you ended up with I guess they were supposed to do a 10-man tag match, but because Jarrett and his partners couldn't agree, they didn't have it. Then Fake Bill talked again to Ted DiBiase after talking to IRS, and now we end up with Burt Reynolds and Jenny Garb from Beverly Hills 90210 as the ring announcer and the timekeeper. You end up getting Roddy Piper coming back, and he's the special guest referee. So you finally get Jim Cornette with Fuji taking Yokozuna out to face Bret Hart. The rematch from WrestleMania 9. Now, I don't talk about WrestleMania 9 in these. This is not one of my WrestleManias. But the year before, Bret lost the title to Yokozuna when Yoko pretty much squashed Bret. And then you had the issue with Hogan becoming the champion, and the rest is history. Yoko won the title back and never looked back. After all the build that they had done with trying to get Yoko to be this monster heel, and he was, even Undertaker could not take down Yokozuna. Bret comes out, he's limping, Yoko goes straight for him. This was built. There was nothing else that was needed. No other, from this Royal Rumble, you could have just went back to WrestleMania, which they brought up, how Bret was screwed, and could Bret win the title back? And Bret got his rear whooped majority of this match. I mean, Yoko was on him. Yokozuna would not let up. He was super vicious. I mean, holding Brett in the ropes trying to choke him. Piper kept having to get him, hey, stop, stop, stop. Cornette tried getting involved. Piper punched him in the face. Brett would occasionally get a little bit of offense, but then Yoko would just like swat him back off like a fly. But finally, Brett gets a little bit of momentum. Excuse me. Made it a back and forth battle. Brett, after fighting, looking like, getting a sharpshooter on, doing the bulldog and everything else, everything he does, Yokozuna once again gets advantage. And you're like, okay, this is going to be another Yokozuna squash. This match lasted longer than the WrestleMania 9 match. But this is where it gets a little weird. And I think, Brett will say to this day that this is his best WrestleMania moment. But it was a little concerning with how they ended this. You get Yoko going for the bonsai drop, got Brett in the corner, and he loses his balance and falls back and he's just laying there. And Brett pins him and gets the win. It's a little weird. Didn't make sense, but at the time, if you were watching wrestling, and me, who was just glad to see Brett win, you didn't really care. Poor Yokozuna was just kind of shafted. Because I guess they didn't think there was a real feasible way for Brett to beat him. But you were happy for Brett. Brett, you get that iconic moment of Brett with the WrestleMania 10 sign behind him and him raising the belt up and, looking exhausted. Brett had already wrestled 2 matches. It was a feel-good moment. And then Randy Savage was the first one out the back to congratulate him. And then here comes the rest of the locker room. They're all celebrating, putting Brett on their shoulders. And then you see Owen at the entranceway just shaking his head because he had already beat Brett, but Brett still managed to one-up him still. And this ended up leading to what was a fantastic steel cage match at SummerSlam after Owen goes on and wins the Royal Rumble, or wins the King of the Ring. So, overall, this was, like I said, one of my favorite WrestleManias. There was a couple duds inside of it, but overall, fantastic WrestleMania. I loved this WrestleMania. So, I'm Zach from the YoBro Gaming and Review channel. Stay tuned. Another one still going to come up today. Episode number 4 for the Road to WrestleMania series still to come today. Thank you all. I will see you guys all in a few hours. Peace out. And just in case you weren't familiar, I will say this again, probably even in the next one, just to make sure people who've seen it remember. This is my top 10 favorite WrestleManias of all time. Last week was WrestleMania 23. This week is WrestleMania 13. This one was at the Rosemont Horizon in Chicago, Illinois, March 23rd, 1997.